Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we're tackling a massive, literally world-shaping mystery. Have you ever stopped to wonder why the modern world is so deeply, structurally unequal? Like, why did human history unfold so incredibly differently on different continents over the last 13,000 years? Well, our mission in this explainer is to peel back the layers of world history, kind of like a giant onion, to uncover the absolute root causes of global wealth and power distribution.
To really get into this, we have to travel back in time a bit, to July 1972, to a beach on the tropical island of New Guinea. The author of our source material was walking along the sand when a charismatic local politician named Yali caught up with him, and Yali asked a deceptively simple question. He said, "Why is it that you white people developed so much cargo and brought it to New Guinea, but we black people had little cargo of our own?" Now, cargo in this context meant material goods, technology, wealth, the whole shebang. This right here is the core paradox of global inequality. And look, let's be absolutely clear right up front. Biological or racist explanations for this disparity, the idea that some populations are just innately more intelligent than others, are entirely scientifically false. So to find the real answer, we're drawing upon the groundbreaking thesis from Jared Diamond's Pulitzer Prize-winning work, Guns, Germs, and Steel. The central idea here is that geography and environment, not human differences, not biology, are the ultimate drivers of human history. To truly answer Yali's question, we need to understand how pure environmental luck shaped the destinies of entire continents.
Section 1. The Collision at Cajamarca, November 16, 1532.
To see exactly how this geographical inequality actually played out on the ground, we've got to look at one of the most dramatic, incredibly lopsided clashes between advanced, Old and New World societies in recorded history. On one side, you have the Spanish conquistador Francisco Pizarro. He's commanding this ragtag, exhausted group of exactly 168 soldiers deep in completely unfamiliar territory. And on the other side, Atahualpa, the absolute monarch of the Inca Empire, surrounded by a battle-hardened army of 80,000 soldiers. I mean, think about those numbers, 168 against 80,000. Yet within minutes of them meeting, Pizarro captured Atahualpa.
So how on earth did a tiny group like that pull it off? Well, the Spanish had some frankly terrifying advantages. We're talking steel swords and armor that native clubs literally could not penetrate. They had guns and artillery that caused immense panic. They had horses, which allowed for devastating cavalry charges. And they had the literacy to coordinate complex political and military strategies. The result of all this? Pizarro's tiny force slaughtered 7,000 Incas that day without losing a single Spanish soldier.
Now, the crucial thing to understand here is that those weapons, the guns, the steel, the horses, they are what historians call proximate explanations. Proximate causes are basically the immediate, right-in-front-of-you reasons why one group conquers another. But if we really want to answer Yali's question, we can't just stop there. We need ultimate explanations. We have to keep peeling back that historical onion. Why were the Europeans the ones to end up with the guns and the steel, while the Incas ended up with stone tools?
Answering this helps dismantle an incredibly pervasive, harmful myth. For centuries, people implicitly or explicitly relied on these completely bogus biologic theories, just assuming Europeans were somehow genetically smarter. But historic reality tells us a vastly different story. Observers who have spent decades living with New Guineans, for example, note their incredible intelligence, alertness, and highly developed mental maps. And they had to be smart. Their harsh survival conditions meant natural selection was absolutely ruthless. Historically, European survival actually had a lot more to do with body chemistry resisting epidemic diseases than sheer intelligence. The advantages the Europeans brought to that battlefield at Cajamarca, they were purely the result of geographic luck.
Moving on to Section 2, Polynesia's Natural Experiment. If you ever wanted a perfect real-world laboratory to test exactly how environment shapes destiny, the Polynesian Islands are it. Just look what happened in December 1835. It was this brutal collision between two groups of Polynesian people, the Maori and the Moriori. About 900 heavily armed Maori from New Zealand sailed over to the Chatham Islands. There, they ran into the Moriori, who were a peaceful population of hunter-gatherers. The Maori basically announced that the Moriori were now their slaves, and they systematically slaughtered, cooked, and enslaved anyone who objected. Because the Moriori had strictly renounced violence in their culture, they were practically defenseless.
But here is the absolute craziest part of this story. The Maori and the Moriori, they shared the exact same ancestors just 1,000 years prior. They were the exact same people. But the Maori settled in New Zealand, which had a warm environment perfectly suited for intensive farming.
That led to crop surpluses, dense populations of around 100,000, and a society that could easily support specialized warriors with advanced weapons. The ancestors of the Moriori, on the other hand, sailed to the Chatham Islands, and it was freezing there. They literally couldn't grow their tropical crops, so they had to revert back to being hunter-gatherers. Because of that, they stayed a small population of just 2,000, developed simple tools, and learned to live peacefully just to survive on their isolated little island. Same genetics, but entirely opposite outcomes, purely due to the environment.
This perfectly highlights the specific environmental variables that shape all human societies. Things like an island's climate, its geological makeup, its total area, how isolated it is. These act as invisible hands molding human culture. And they all dictate one massive foundational thing: whether a society can produce food surpluses. See, if your environment allows for a surplus of food, you can feed people who don't spend their days farming. And that means you can support chiefs, bureaucrats, craft specialists, and standing armies. If your environment doesn't allow for it, you remain an egalitarian band of hunter-gatherers.
All right, Section 3, up to the starting line. We're going way back to around 11,000 BC.
Okay, so we know environment shapes societies over a span of, say, 1,000 years. But what if we push Yali's question all the way back to the dawn of village life? Let's trace the human journey and see if any continent had a geographic head start. Around 7 million years ago, our origins begin in Africa. Jump to 500,000 years ago, and our ancestors spread to Eurasia. About 40,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans pulled off the incredible feat of crossing water to settle Australia and New Guinea. But it wasn't until around 11,000 BC that humans finally colonized the Americas. Just consider the massive disparity there. Africa and Eurasia had literally millions or hundreds of thousands of years of human habitation and development. The Americas were the absolute last to be settled.
And that timeline difference, it had massive ultimate geographic consequences. In Eurasian Africa, big mammals actually survived because they co-evolved alongside early humans over millions of years. As our hunting skills gradually improved, the animals slowly learned to fear us. But in the Americas and Australia, it was a sudden impact. Fully skilled modern human hunters arrived in lands full of huge mammals that had zero evolutionary fear of them. The tragic result is that humans likely wiped out almost all large domesticable animals in the Americas and Australia. In a single stroke of bad timing, they permanently lost access to beasts of burden, horses for battle, and animals to pull plows.
So let's tie this whole thing together. This is the ultimate core of history. Watch how the chain of causation works. It all starts with geography. Geography dictates what wild plants and big animals are actually available to be domesticated. Those domesticable species lead directly to farming and massive food surpluses. Those surpluses allow a society to support non-farming specialists, the politicians, the inventors, the professional armies. And those specialists are the ones who ultimately invent the writing, forge the steel, and manufacture the guns. Geographic luck is the ultimate cause that set the stage for all those bloody, lopsided collisions of the modern world.
Which brings us to a final, pretty profound question to chew on. We've seen how the layers of the historical onion peel back, revealing that it was geographic and environmental luck, not race, not innate intelligence, that gave some societies early access to cargo, guns, and steel. So if environmental differences shaped the conquests of the past, how should this ultimate lens completely change the way we view the deeply entrenched global inequalities of today? I really hope this explainer has shifted your perspective on world history and leaves you hungry to look at modern geopolitics in a totally new light. Thanks so much for joining me.